Camila Alves is not that hot. Jesuits really overpraise their agents. The extreme bias in the press, gushing over Jesuit agents like Loree McBride for Brent Camila Alves for Matthew McConaughey, Morgan Brown for Gerard Butler, Susan Schneider for Robin Williams, etc., should be obvious to any objective observer. It should also be obvious to any objective observer that there is a conspiracy out there to make me appear crazy just because my man decided to start a marriage list for me. Isn't it rather interesting that all of these women, before they became the love interest of the celebrity, was someone we never heard of before? It's obvious that Jesuit women are actually nobody and no talent women who only became famous because they associate with a famous man, which never would have happened if they were not Jesuits, which gave them the backing of the richest organization in the world, the Roman Catholic Church, as they hijacked or raped their way into the life of the celebrity who doesn't want to have anything to do with them. Why is the significant other of all the men on my marriage list a nobody woman that no one ever heard of before they associated with that famous man? Why are these celebrities all attracted to nobody women? Don't they like famous women? Jesuits cannot use a celebrity woman who became famous because of her own talents or accomplishments, because no such woman would be a Jesuit agent who would cooperate with the Jesuits to rape a celebrity in order to become his wife. Even if they cloned the celebrity woman, her original would be sure to cause trouble for the Jesuits. That's if the original exists. For this reason, Jesuits prefer to use nobody women that they make famous by virtue of their almost 100% control over the internet, press, and media, especially in the West, like the United States and UK. Is it only a coincidence that all the men on my marriage list have been associated with nobody women who only became famous because of their associations with the famous man? I mean, not one of these men likes another famous woman. To those who have just heard what I've said and are listening with objectivity, it's as plain as the nose on your face that this is a Roman Catholic conspiracy. Another note of interest: none of these women would dare criticize the Roman Catholic Church. You don't hear a peep from them bad about the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, Camila had a Catholic wedding to the Matthew McConaughey Jesuit clone. Come on, folks. 1 + 1 = 2. Anyone with a lick of common sense can see what's going on. I'm not saying that they can't be attracted to a nobody woman ever, but isn't it rather strange that every single man on my marriage list that I know about has a nobody woman for a spouse? I can't think of an exception with a single one of them. I mean, didn't Brad Pitt like Angelina Jolie? So what's wrong with famous women who were famous before they married the man? You mean all my men don't like famous women? About the only exception is Will Smith's wife, but her latest performances have not been too impressive. Looks like this clone may need to go back to acting school so she can measure up to the woman Jesuits murdered, which was the original wife. I think I smell a Jesuit conspiracy about 1 billion miles long. If anything, you'd think they may prefer another rich lady so they could be sure the woman isn't just after their money. Excuse me, Jesuits, just how dumb do you think we are? Is it just a coincidence that all these women take the men on my marriage list to court to get their money? Of course, that never makes it into the news, but that is what's really happening. Oh, this sounds like real love to me. I smell Jesuit rape, extortion, and greed in all these lovely fake celebrities who obviously rape the man for his money and use the excuse that they love him and they are so hot the man couldn't resist them. Yeah, so hot that the man lost his head and almost went bankrupt for the woman? Yeah, right. Did you know that most of these men on my marriage list have been battling bankruptcy because of these women? Yeah, of course that never makes the news. Jesuits make sure that never makes the news. Excuse me, when I look at this Camila Alves, she ain't that hot. I certainly wouldn't want to give her my life savings, that's for sure, if I was a guy. In fact, she looks genuinely vain and conceited, which actually makes her ugly. The fact is, she bomb raped her way to stardom. If Matthew wouldn't give her sex, she'd blow him up. I can hear the Jesuits now. Oh, you're crazy. Yeah, don't we know? Just because it seems unlikely doesn't mean it didn't happen, just as I said. I think it's rather unlikely that every single man on my marriage list has a nobody woman for a spouse. If I recall, wouldn't you at least think that about 20% of them would end up with a famous woman for a spouse? I mean, that's who they, they're famous and they deal with famous people all the time at their jobs and stuff. You would think that about 20% of them would end up with somebody famous. How interesting that not one of my men has a celebrity wife. A celebrity wife is a woman who became a celebrity before she associated with the celebrity man who was a household name before she became associated with her very famous lover. To downplay this coincidence that not a single man on my marriage list has a celebrity wife who was famous before she associated with her famous husband, all these women made sure to have the celebrity's baby or babies to trap him into a marriage with them. The pregnancy is accomplished by artificial insemination, rape, bomb rape, drug rape, and or extortion. I will list out the Jesuit women associated with each man. As you can tell, none of them is a household name, like their counterpart. And if the woman is famous, they are divorced from the man because Jesuits have problems with very famous women falsely parading as the true spouse of the man. Too many inconsistencies cause problems for the Jesuits. If the man's extremely famous, Jesuits try to pair the man with one of their agents who's already famous to make the union seem believable. Each Jesuit woman gets gushing press releases and staged public appearances to make them appear oh so glamorous, with Jesuit agents posing as the public raving with jealousy about their beauty. The filthy rich Jesuit order will spare no money to promote their agents. If the Jesuit wife does have fame, more than likely she's been replaced with a clone. Most of the wives are not famous in their own right. Jesuits find it easier to control the publicity of their own and non-famous women, so they prefer to use a non-famous woman and to make her famous with Jesuit staged press releases. I have to admit, I'm not really into Hollywood and celebrities, so if I mention their name, I'm going to mention the name of all the significant others associated with my name, and if I never would have heard of these women until I heard that they were the wife of the famous celebrity they're associated with. If you mentioned that name to me in public and I knew nothing about their celebrity husband, I would say, who? It means the woman is just a nobody woman that the Jesuits promoted and made into a star. Loree McBride. Who ever heard of her? Except, Brent Spiner's wife. Okay. Lyudmila Putina. Who ever heard of her? Of course, Alina Kabaeva. Well, I'm not really... I vaguely recall she was in the Olympics, I think. Camila Alves. Who? Morgan Brown. Who was she? Deborah Lee Furness. Well, everybody knows she's Hugh Jackman's wife, but if Hugh Jackman wasn't famous, who'd know about her? Keith Morgan. He's on my marriage list. Of course, he's not famous. We'll skip the non-famous guys. Hu Jintao. I don't know who his wife is. He's stuck with the clone of his murdered wife. Tony Blair. Well, I've heard of Sherry only because of Tony Blair. Other than that, I wouldn't know who she was. She's the clone of his murdered wife. Will Smith. The exception. Jada Pinkett Smith. Clone of murdered wife. However, recently her performances don't seem quite on par with how she was like a decade ago. Could it be that the clone needs to go back to school and take acting lessons? David Hasselhoff. Haley Roberts? Who's she? Sean Connery's wife, Michelin Roque Brune. I'm not sure I pronounced the name right. Never heard of her. F.K. Twigs for Robert Pattinson. These are all on my marriage list, which, by the way, was not my idea, but I feel sorry for these guys. As soon as they go on my marriage list, the Jesuits pair them up with a creep and then make her famous and make it look like everybody should be jealous of the ugly woman. Oh, who's next? Oh, Gina O'Kelly for Chuck Norris. Never heard of her. Alicia Roundtree. Who's she? That's for Jude Law. Dawn Laurel Jones. I don't know who she is. Keely Shea Smith, Pierce Brosnan. I sort of vaguely heard of her somewhere. Not a household name. Loree McBride and Alina Kabaeva raped Keanu Reeves. Looks like they haven't pounced a wife on him yet. Jim Carrey. He was murdered, poor guy, in May 2012. I'll be going into that in one of my books. So they don't need to worry about him. Though his clone, I think, needs to go back to acting school or something. He's not doing quite as good as the original Jim Carrey. Johnny Depp. Whoever heard of Amber Heard? Well, maybe you have. Like I said, I don't keep up with all this stuff. Curtis James Jackson. He doesn't have a wife yet. Orlando Bloom. Miranda Kerr. I've heard of her. Don't know much about her, but I've heard of her. Tony Stark. Pepper Potts. Emma Frost. Madame Mask. Bethany Cave. Rumiko Fujikawa. War Machine. Never heard of any of them. They're all associated with him. They're probably all Jesuits. Sam Barbary. This guy on my marriage list turned out to be a Jesuit, so we won't worry about him. Robin Williams. Susan Schneider. Who's she? Of course, they murdered Robin because he tried to come out and marry me in 2014, which made me really angry they did that. So I wrote a book. I even have an audio book on him, which you need to check out. It's called The Shimmering Sea. Jason Momoa. Lisa Bonet. Who's she? Paloma Jimenez for Vin Diesel. Joaquin Phoenix. They tried to get him married to his yoga instructor, the Jesuits, in 2014. Didn't quite work out. Optimus Prime. We'll skip him because he's not famous. I mean, that's the nickname for one of my Walmart managers. David Duchovny. Téa Leoni. Who's she? Alice Kim for Nicolas Cage. I never heard of her. Joe Green for Hugh Laurie. Must be the clone of his murdered wife, I guess. Carl Sagan was cryogenically frozen in 1996, resurrected in 2011, lives at Church of Gale. Zac Efron, Vanessa Hudgens. Okay, all of these that I just mentioned, they're only famous by virtue of being a Jesuit. They are no talent women who would be no more famous than your next door neighbor, assuming you're not famous, except they have the benefit of the multi-billion-dollar Jesuit propaganda machine to soar to fame to serve their church, the Roman Catholic Church. They fake as atheists and other religions, but are all undercover Jesuit agents. Don't you find it rather interesting that all of these very famous men can't seem to get a very famous wife? They all want to marry poor women and make them famous and then have them go after them in court for all their money? I guess that's it, huh? Hey, Jesuits, how dumb do you think we are? Come on, man. Isn't it rather an interesting coincidence that every single man on my marriage list is stuck with a no-name woman who only became famous by virtue of her association with her household name star? Duh. I think we got a conspiracy going on here. This doesn't sound right. You would think out of all those famous names I mentioned that at least more of their significant others would be famous. 1 + 1 = 2. This is my joke on the Jesuits. They like to make joke videos about me saying I'm crazy and everything. First of all, I'm going to tell you something. You know how the Jesuits are doing? They're using their billion-dollar propaganda machine to use Adobe Photoshop to get pictures of the clone of these men with these women. Then they impregnate these women using artificial insemination, rape, or whatever, and it's all a very elaborate, very expensive, billion-dollar Jesuit operation to knock me out because I'm the King David and Catherine the Great Woman. This is my joke on you, Jesuits. Answer this question. Why is it that 98% of the men on my marriage list get stuck with a no-name woman who only gets fame by virtue of her association with the man? Is this just a coincidence? Or do we have a conspiracy going on here?